So what's the difference between AV programming and AV software development? We've talked about that before, but today we get into what it takes to do products in the AV industry from a software development perspective. All that and more on A State of Control. A State of Control, episode 119, Not Works of Art. Welcome to A State of Control, an AVNation podcast that highlights the control, programming, and automation aspects of the audiovisual industry. My name is Steve Greenblatt. I'm your host. Thanks for joining us today. Today, we're going to have an interesting conversation. We're going to talk a little bit about how the role of an AV programmer has morphed a little bit for some. We've talked a bit in the past about AV software development, and two of our guests today are going to talk a little bit about some products and services that they've launched that are a little bit different than what you would see typically from an AV programmer. And before I get to introduce them, I'm pleased to say hi to my partner here at A State of Control, Rich Fregosa. How are you, Rich?
I'm doing good. I'm looking forward to an intercontinental show. So I'm feeling quite international today here from sunny California.
Absolutely looking forward to it. We get to do a first here, I think, that we're going to be saying hi to first to international guests, also two that know each other quite well because they happen to be working together within the same organization. And I'll start with Neil Silver from Centro. Centro is a company that is part of LCD. So in case you know him in that identity, and he was last with us in episode 107. Welcome, Neil.
Yeah, thanks for having us back, or for having me back, and yeah, fun to be on with two of us, as you say. Maybe a State of Control first.
Absolutely, and thanks for joining us. You hopped on last minute and helped to round out the show, so I appreciate it. And last but not least, another returning guest. He was last on episode 109, and I was going to make all sorts of jokes about having him over Neil, but I don't get to do that now. He's Tony Howard. He is also from Centro. Welcome back, Tony.
Thank you for having me. I look forward to this discussion.
Fantastic. I figured you guys would like this one, and it's one that I also connect with. And I think it's just something that we need to be aware of. And before I get into the first question, the AV programmers have typically been known as the person with the laptop making the system work, working behind the scenes, doing what it took to make all the equipment work together and provide that seamless user interface and user experience that clients need. And for many, many years, that's really the box that AV programmers were put in. But thanks to our guests today and others, we've started to see some evolution of that and started to see that AV programmers can do more. And a lot of what they're doing is also benefiting the industry and clients as well. So Rich, when I talk about this evolution of AV programming, do you think that it's something that is just a sign of the times, something that's temporary, or do you think that we're going to see more of these types of offerings of products and services come about?
I'm hoping it's going to accelerate. I mean, we've been talking about it for years, and we always draw the comparisons that although we do use a lot of the same tools, we don't operate in the same greater, quote unquote tech world. It's the development world that's out there is different than the AV development world, but we're finding our similarities and we're finding our synergies, and we're going, I think what's happening is companies and just our industry is going, they've been doing it for 20 years and they've kind of worked some of the wrinkles out of things. Maybe we ought to stop trying to reinvent the wheel and start using these tools and follow. And, we've seen it in industries, just in the CI industry, just forever. The CDM market, as it matured and when we started, I always used to, the running joke is that we all became integrators because our bands weren't making any money. And so we had to get real jobs. And when we started always with that rock and roll kind of cowboy attitude, and AV programming for many, many, many years was that same pursuit, just a whole lot more in a nerdier kingdom. It was, we were the guys that were swinging, that were playing D&D and weren't the ones who were, rocking out with Kiss makeup, but it was, the same kind of feel is that, you wanted to be that band of outsiders, the original hackers. I know, sitting around here, I remember being a teen on a 300 baud modem and, trying to click my way down the rabbit hole. And I think that starting out in the industry for AV programmers, because it was so specific and purpose-driven in terms of the deliverables, we didn't know any better. And so we always felt that we had to do it our way, that we just had to make it up as we went. And then as the projects matured, but not the project so much as the scale. 30 years ago, it was exorbitantly expensive to try to get an enterprise solution to connect not only offices within a building, but offices throughout a country and then internationally past that. So, the overall ecosystem that we're having to deal with now, and it's UC, it's unified communications, and honestly, it's this thing, right? We said it before, and we constantly kept saying it, and we were saying it 12 years ago, right? And people were saying, I was like, oh, mobile's going to change the world, and the iPad's going to change how we do business, and we always used to have, oh, nothing will replace a touch panel, nothing will replace a dedicated solution, and here we are. Here we are. We're 15 years in on one of the manufacturers, their iOS solution. It's 15 years old. I remember I was at the San Francisco Design Center and I premiered this in a $15 million home. That was the premiere, and that was 15 years ago. And I kind of went, I'm getting a little gray here thinking about it, but we've come a long way. And again, so with UC, with the advent of mobile, with all of these tools that are accelerating, we've got no choice. We had to mature, and we had to mature a whole lot faster than I think potentially we wanted to originally. And in order just to stay in business and to be able to get your projects done, you have to, because you have to hit scale on a lot of this. They're not as, the solutions are elegant in terms of what we present to the client, but they're no longer one-offs. So much of what we had to do was based in a one-off environment. Now you have to focus on being able to replicate and partnering. Because when you did a one-off, you were doing something that was your product, right? Every project you did was your product, how you approached it. Now, because we have to deal with soft solutions, we don't have that luxury. So, yes, it's happening because it has to, because if not, you just will not be able to stay in the game that much longer, because you don't have as much of a pool to be able to come in and put a one-off solution in there, because the technology companies that are driving things forward, we're having to make sure that we stay complementary and flexible with them, as opposed to in the past, we went, this is what we got. We're going to make it. We're going to ride this out for the next 10 years until the budget comes back around again and we do a complete change out and do it all over again. Those cycles have changed.
So, Tony, Centro is a new product that's on the market. From my perspective, and I'll let you fill in the details. It's a platform. It's a solution that is meant to be geared towards certain needs. What's the thought process that goes into even creating something of that nature?
Centro is management dashboards for, at least for hospitality, as well as for MDU and a few other sort of market sectors that we keep looking at. And the key component is scale. So as Richard was saying, if we do a user interface, we want to make that a beautiful user interface. We want to make that universally accepted and understood by all users. And we want to do that, and we can do that, we can afford to do that because we're doing it 500 times or 1,000 times. So that's the sort of the key component there. And that's a big difference program of just doing a simple in-room system, one room, all and quite unique devices perhaps, versus something that scales, something that can be utilized again and again and again. And that's sort of the differentiator for me. and our software and that we change as we've moved away from those little internal systems. It's been a great. My toolbox is suddenly being opened. All the latest stuff, all the latest security protocols.
So Neil, I'll kind of throw it over to you, and you can piggyback on what Tony said, or you can also talk a little bit about the fact that Centro isn't the first foray that LCD has in going down the product route. You have many products. You have your own store of products, and what was the thought process about getting into that side of the business?
I think it's an evolution, isn't it? So I know with what you guys have done at Control Concepts as well, and it's really interesting. Rich sort of said, we've all been doing products. If you flip it around the other day, we've just been doing one-off pieces of art in these installations. Either we could maybe call the GUIs pieces of art as well. Some of them are pretty special, but yeah, they're as you say, they are products. So I think many programmers, I go back to that old term of just programmers, have had kind of aspirations of, there's some really good bits here. I wonder if I could make that into a product. And I think the first step with it is just making it something that you reuse internally. That's the start of that, something that you reuse internally. You can call that the start of productization. But it was a necessary step for us to build some products, because there is a very different way of thinking about the process. And I thought Tony might answer the process of how do you come about that product. We started off with a big whiteboard and loads of brainstorming and ideas about what are we going to build, because that is the other issue. I mean, we'd all love to have infinite time and development and funding to build all the crazy ideas we come up with, but you got to narrow it down. You've got to kind of start looking at the capabilities, how long it'll take, and all these sorts of things. So we started off with a big board, and what really informed the process of narrowing down those ideas was some of our experience of having brought things into products before that, and how those different products are used. But there's definitely a very, very different mindset around both software development and that process, but productization. It's not sort of tied together. If we decided to go and start making, a widget, some 3D printed thing that was a product, you still need the kind of product development, and then there's a different process to build it. So the two separate things separated out. Because I know when I was just kind of reading through the kind of ideas you'd had for the discussion today, we talk about that kind of, and we've talked about it before on the different podcasts, about the difference between software development and programming. And because you can be a software developer, I mean, we have many now software developers coming into the industry, guys who have that's been their first learning. They didn't do the band thing, they didn't do the lighting in amateur theatre. They've come in as a programmer, and they know how to do software development. But that doesn't mean they're necessarily making products either. So you got to separate those two things out. And some software developers will, I find it one really intriguing thing I find is that there is definitely the same issue in software development. There's where you and I will kind of think about saying, well, we've built that already. Surely there's some starting point we can use there. There's a lot of software developers in the new modern tools will want to start from scratch every time. And that's partially because they know they can build very fast and very agile. And what was correct to do 6 months ago might not be the best practice in 6 months' time. But that's really intriguing to me, because part of the kind of benefit of the modern software tools is that you can reuse things, but also it's moving so fast that, as I say, 6 months' time, it might not be the best way to do it. Another technology may have come out, and a new language may have come out, so... So yeah, it was definitely a necessary progression for us to build small products first. We had ideas to build big products for a long time before we actually kind of sat down and went, right, are we going to do this, and felt confident enough to move forward in the process.
So Rich, taking it over to you, we we've seen these products before. I think some of the first have been GUI products, if you remember. That was a big thing. And for me, I look at products as being something that you produce when people are kind of asking you for the same thing over and over again. But there's a lot that goes into making a product versus just doing a one-off solution. Can you share a little bit about your thoughts about that? Like what would be tempting to do versus challenging to do, and should people caution about?
I think the first thing is your discipline as a company. Like the conversation's always great. I mean, if you've been in this business long enough, you've had the conversations internally about, well, we do X 80% of the time, so we should build a framework. I mean, that was what was tossed around for how many years, right? We build a framework and we'll provide this because we would try to follow suit with what the manufacturers we were working with, right? Well, what was if we had a wizard, right? That was it. We would, so many of us, if we do a wizard style system, right? We'll click and we'll do this and this and this and this and this, and then the project will magically appear, because those were the tools and that was the philosophy at the time, and I think we have to always consider where we are in the kind of the epochs of tech. When we started out, where were the tools available to be able to do it? Were you doing some single stuff? Even just right now with the tools in control system programming, collaborative work is just starting. The ability for multiple people to work on a project simultaneously, it is not easy right now to do it, even though it should make sense given the collaborative nature of AV. Now, because software developers are going, hey, we've got examples of thousands of programmers working simultaneously on a project and having a process and the discipline. But then that becomes the fact that now you have to, in this industry, because everybody is so darn smart, and capable of doing a lot of things, sometimes that's the Achilles heel, because you don't want to let go of the things that you're doing. Because as you grow out as an organization and you need to focus on your key skill sets, you have to add one extra layer, which now you need a software manager. And that's somebody who doesn't even code, right? Now that's somebody who's just responsible for making sure that this thing doesn't fall under its weight. And so in this industry, because we've all grown up, most of us, on a paint bucket in a conference room or in a house or in a classroom with the leftover boxes of our gear, typing on a laptop and just getting it done and going, I've got 6 hours before people walk in, to say, no, let's step back. We need to go ahead and consider our short-term, our long-term gains. We need to figure out from our regression testing standpoint that any change we make now doesn't break a project 4 years that we did 4 years ago. And if they call us tomorrow, we can't go back to them and say that's going to be a number of X $1,000 because we changed our process. Those are the business parts of developing and making a product that it's great to think about technically. There's a lot you can do technically. But what happens when you have a client who says, no, you sold me this product. I didn't say to change your product. You just came to me arbitrarily and said you changed it, and you're telling me that I have to buy it all over again? That's not happening. And by the way, here's our agreement that says that ain't happening. So there's a lot from a development standpoint that you get to grow up as a business, and you have to, like I always said, is you have to be brutal with your weaknesses, right? If you don't have the ability to manage a team, you need to hire a manager, right? If your technical chops, and say you're the head of the company and your technical chops are there and you want to be the one that runs the show and do the skunk work stuff in there, well, that's great. But then you need an operations person, or great, we do great stuff, but God darn it, we lost money again on this job. Then you need a finance person. So this part of where we are in our transition is as just much financial health as it is technical knowledge. And I think that we don't always do smaller companies a service by reminding them that you are in business to make a living, to provide for your family and feed your soul. And again, the artist in me is still always Aaron, like Neil was talking about and Tony were talking about. Absolutely. Some of my GUIs were art. Some of them were like Jackson Pollock paintings where it just looks like I threw something at the wall, right? But we as an industry, what I love and what I love about this show is that these viewpoints come in from, here's the things we've done wrong. Here are the things we're really looking forward to doing. But here are the pitfalls, right? Because we go to so many of these shows and we always talk about the best case scenarios. And we have our manufacturers and we have our sales reps and everybody else telling us, oh, you'll do a great job doing X, Y, and Z. I have never had one of my manufacturers come and tell me that by embracing what they're saying, I could potentially put myself out of business. But they'll stay in business. Right? And I think what's great, and I think it also came from the pandemic, is from the software side, a lot more companies are deciding, I'm going to dictate how my company survives. I am no longer going to be reliant upon a purpose-built solution from a single manufacturer. And I think that's the biggest kernel for me, is that by embracing software development and by embracing a product, you are saying if another worldwide economic meltdown happened, or I severed a relationship with a key partner, or something that we don't even know about, I have given myself the ability to thrive by not necessarily creating we all love our partnerships, but I think control system programmers have lived by a one-sided loyalty because it's paid the bills. And very well. My house is pretty much...
I'd extend that a bit, Rich, as well. So we don't just have a loyalty just to a lot of us do have key loyalties to key manufacturers, but we also have this real fixed loyalty to the industry as well. And one of the most eye-opening things to me has been spending time over the last year going to trade shows in different industries and seeing how they do it and see how they talk differently about products and solutions and difficulties. And prior to that, I've just spent, and as much as I love going to the Infocoms and the ISEs, because we see all our mates and we see all our friends and we have great chat and discussions, we're a little bit of an echo chamber, we're a lot of an echo chamber. So I would definitely recommend to people, get out of your comfort zone and go to startup conferences, go to conferences, just see what's going on in your local area. It doesn't have to be expensive, but it's such an enlightening thing to go and see other industries and see what they're talking about amongst themselves. So we need to, it's not just the manufacturer, it's also just the industry that we need to break out of and open our minds.
Tony, I saw you kind of clicking with a lot of the things that Rich was saying. What are some of your thoughts and some of the aha moments you've had in doing working on a product versus projects?
Management and perhaps a CEO that really wants to be technical and right up there, and then there is a need for some management and there is a need for some sort of coming and going. That's sort of explaining our situation so perfectly well, is that we have some very technical people, but we also need a level of kind of pushing a big picture into the micro tasks or getting bogged down in this problem and that problem. What is the bigger picture? Who are we selling it to? How do we keep this train with the whole financial side that's completely separate for a business to make a product, for a small business looking to make a product? And that's what it's just, it rang really true. I did kind of want to mention, at least with what Neil was just saying around the how they do it and seeing that they're sort of enlightened. I've only felt dealing with software developers, because obviously we hire a software development team that are the take from them when I have a problem is very open and, oh yeah, we could use this library and we can do this and we can do this. Generally, when we're dealing with an AV programmer, they're more likely going to come up and go, I have someone over here who's been very incoming, very forward, very happy to sort of make this thing work. And that's because their toolbox is much bigger.
Neil, going back to you, as somebody who is kind of overseeing things and working with Tony, and I know you guys are very very close relationship in making Centro successful. What are some of the surprises that you've had, and sometimes ideas can be great, but also be your worst enemy.
Yeah, I think Tony talked to what surprises have we had. I think we've had less of them, so I think we've had less of them with Centro, and I'd say we'd probably had more of them, and that's why the evolution through building smaller products was so useful to us, and I would say that was a more painful period. Surprises can be painful in business, so those would be more surprises. I think because when we've built Centro, I think as Rich mentioned, it's very common to kind of take a product that you use internally and say, how can we productize that? That's not what we've done with Centro. We built it as a product first. And I think that's caused us to have less surprises along the way. And for us just to be able to, I'm sure we'll have some to come. Surprises that we had or difference to how we definitely had the surprise of really, I knew how to manage programmers, but how to manage software developers at distance is very different. Realizing, I guess to another point, I'd say realizing that it's not just us that don't know how to manage software developers. Program managers in other bits of the industry don't know how to manage software development either. And I guess we come from, we've all been sat on those paint tins working for project managers, but those are project managers who deal with everything from making sure the screen gets delivered to making sure they've got, one commissioning guy, one hanger and banger, and that's their kind of level of project management. That's very different to managing the scope of a software project through design, prototyping, testing. So I think that those have been the biggest learning curves. I'm not sure there's quite the same as surprises, but maybe they are. Those have been the biggest learning curves, have been adding those different layers of project management and getting that right. And we've not got that right yet, but we are so much further along than when we started in terms of that.
I wanted to just kind of chime into the conversation from my own perspective, in that my company has also adopted a product approach, and a lot of the motivation was because we wanted to do something that was different from what we had done previously, and we wanted to get away from some of the challenges that we face day to day in the type of work that we were doing, and also we felt good, well suited for what we were taking on. But it is a different ballgame, as you mentioned, and there are a lot of things to consider. And for us, one of those things has been support. Tony, I know that you may not be at this stage yet, but is so support can be anything from a person to a department. Is what are your thoughts on support?
It can get really scary really quickly if you start looking at it. If you're dealing with the project and you know how you can support the project, and that's fine. But when you start dealing on end scale, using this type of language, like using all sorts of things, your scale concept can become quite really scary. And you do need to start looking at understanding your users, understanding what sort of support you can give them. It can be scary. You can definitely look and go, oh my God, I'm going to be supporting thousands of this product. And if you actually look at some modern techniques to support that, and as well, we've got really good logs as well that have been afforded to us because it's a product as opposed to a product. We actually have global cloud-based logging that we can actually sort of see what's happening just before the person's even called.
I think it's setting expectations of support as well. That was part of our learning curve with smaller products. Setting expectations of what support you're going to give, what support the user needs to take on themselves. That's always been a little bit of a thing with software programming. I mean, there are different roles within even a project kind of base. Making different support channels available and making clear what those are and which different support routes people can take. That's definitely important. Some people don't like picking up a phone. Some people only want support via a phone. So you've got to just set out your stall as to what you provide, and if it's included, if it's not included, and that's important to understand and set out in advance. And that's part of the product design cycle, which, I mean, we could have been on a podcast a couple of years ago and we might have been talking about support around a project and we'd have maybe said the same thing, and it might have not been designed into the project either. But it's more important because of the scale thing, as Tony says, because you need to support multiple different users in different time zones and in different like product hardware architectures and things like that.
Yeah.
So setting the expectations is important as ever.
I would definitely agree with that. You never know who's on the other end, and you don't know when they're going to be contacting you. So there's, and as you said, one way of handling that is establishing guidelines. But it's probably a good place for us to wrap this one up. But I really appreciate both Tony and Neil joining us to share this, because I think that this is an interesting part of the future of the industry and the evolution of AV programmers. Tony, I'll start with you. How can people get in touch with you, learn more about Centro? And if you wanted to give a little bit of a pitch about Centro, feel free.
On LinkedIn, Instagram, all the various places, obviously, as well, at lightingcontrol.co.uk with Neil. And definitely seeing a lot of traction in MDU and hospitality, and that's what to do with people imagining those interfaces, again, that they kind of want to do at scale, and imagining those use cases in hotels, in apartment buildings, in small communities. It's been really, really great to have people reaching out and telling us what they want, and we've got a product that delivers it. So we're doing really well.
I'd jump on and say on the website you can actually scan a QR code and see the interfaces as well. So that's well worth doing. We'd love you to do that. And before I say how to reach me, what I'd also say, and I think Steve, I'm going to extend the invite for people to do this with Steve as well. If there are programs out there in the community, programmers and businesses out there in the community, and they're scared and wanting to kind of think about how do I go this way and how do I do it in a product, then reach out to me. You can find me on LinkedIn, Neil Silver. If you're looking for the LCD business, then you'll find us at lightingcontrol.co.uk.
Absolutely. And you have some drivers and other utilities there as well. And Rich, how can people get in touch with you, learn what you're up to? And if you wanted to share any wrap-up words, feel free.
Type in Google's these guys' names. So, I'm here for the fireside chat, So, and as I was telling with Tony before, it's, I just want to be able to do this with Australian rules football. So I just want that on the screen, right? Yeah. If you do want to find out a little bit more about us, you can find us at fregosadesign.com, the webpage. You can find me on the socials, on the interwebs at rfregosa. But first and foremost, first and foremost, I want to take a moment and congratulate my partner here for being named Infocom's Commercial Integrator Programming Company of the Year, by the way. So congratulations, sir. Well deserved. And it cannot go unnoticed, seeing as that this is a show about programming. And also your AV Healthy Living initiative. And so that was, if you don't know about those, please go ahead and type in the Googles for both and read about Steve's successes and where he's come from. And kind of the whole point, right, is that if you want to be successful in this industry, you emulate yourselves after people who are successful in this industry. And that's why I try very hard to live up to the things that Steve does. And so I'm going to say that first, because a lot of love to you, partner. It's well deserved. You've worked hard for it. These little things should not go unnoticed, because
I appreciate it.
It's a testament to who you are as a man, but also for the company that you guys run. So with that said, if you do want to find out more about me, if you do want to find out more about us, please join us here at AVNation.tv, our suite of articles and shows. Best possible place that I hope you find us, and always supporting our sponsors.
Thanks so much, Rich. I appreciate that. And it's as somebody who has been a leader of a team for a while, I give them the credit for helping us to get to where we are. And it meant a lot to me to be recognized as a team. So thank you so much. for me, you can reach me at Steve Greenblatt on social media. The company, as Rich mentioned, Control Concepts, can be at controlconcepts.net. And while you're there, you could check out, we have a utility module store. We have some products ourselves. So that's something that we're also delving into, as well as API integrations with manufacturers. So that's just kind of piggybacking on the importance of this topic and the value that Neil and Tony are bringing to the industry as well. And as Rich said, visit AVNation.tv to get coverage of trade shows, download your podcasts. A lot of new things happening on the website. Lots of articles, and the content formats changed a bit. So check that out, and leave a rating, review, let us know what you think. And we're always looking for new topics and new guests. So we are here to serve you, and we'd like to hear more from you. So please reach out to us. And until next time, this has been A State of Control,
the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
Hi, this is Jennifer Goodyear
and Erica Carroll
from the Women in AV podcast, where we are encouraged by the incredible stories of women in AV.
Listen in on fun, empowering conversations as we chat with inspiring women, breaking barriers and creating their own path in the industry.
Check out Women in AV on avnation.tv or wherever you get your podcasts.